Hello everyone, I am Ewaenruwa Nomaren from It Pays to Fear God, and this is First Breakdown. Today's verse is 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 6, which reads, "Who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life." St. Paul was saying that he was proud and grateful to be somebody who would represent and talk about the new covenant. If we read Jeremiah chapter 31 from verses 31 to 33, which is the concept of focusing more on the Spirit than of the letter. But what is the Spirit in the letter? The letter represents the traditions, generally the physical regulations and spiritual standards that God set up both in Jewish ecclesiastical history and even in Christian history for us to understand spiritual matters. So traditions like circumcision, tithes, the Sabbath, and other stuff like that, they were physical traditions that meant spiritual things that the physical traditions were supposed to lead humanity to understand. The letter is just physical stuff that we can do without really wanting to, but the Spirit is about the heart. The Spirit is, do we really want to do it? Are we willing, or are we being forced? King Uzziah was somebody who fulfilled the letter but not the spirit, because he did what was right in God's sight, 2 Chronicles chapter 25 in verses 1 and 2, but not with a perfect heart. Meaning, sure, he did it, but he wasn't very happy about it. Jonah was the same thing. Sure, he preached the word of God to the people of Nineveh eventually, but if you look at how the story went down, it wasn't just go do it and then he said, okay, I'll go ahead. He first of all went to the opposite direction, then he was thrown into a fish's belly and all other kinds of things before he eventually went to go preach. And even when he did, he showed some kind of disgust when God didn't actually fulfill his prophecies, because God was merciful to the repentant people of Nineveh. And the Pharisees also were people who focused on the letter and not on the spirit, because of course it was the letter that would make themselves holy and popular before the other Jews. And in Matthew chapter 23 verse 23, Jesus Christ, when antagonizing the Pharisees, he stated, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye pay tithe of mint and asin and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone." Jesus Christ was saying you have to focus on those important stuff first before you go to the least important stuff, which only existed to help you understand the more important stuff. And every attribute that was in the Bible, if you look at obedience, love, faith, judgment, etc., they all have their letter and spiritual versions. Let's take obedience, for example. Physical obedience is just following the traditions that God set up, celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles, Leviticus chapter 23, from verses 33 to 43. But really, the spiritual stuff were that you had to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. If you read Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 5, you had to consider his ways. You had to be willing to support him, follow his holiness, stuff like that. It was about the heart, because God is a spirit. If you read John chapter 4 verse 24, and that is what he looks at. If you read Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 10, and also that for Samuel chapter 16 verse 7. And it is only when we make sure we focus on those attributes, if we read Micah chapter 6 verse 8, that we can be considered true Jews. For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart and the spirit, and not of the letter, whose praise is not of man, but of God. Romans chapter 2 and verses 28 and 29. And that is where I think I can stop on discussing the verse 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 6, which reads, "Who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life."